This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft. Because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. Hello and welcome to this week's Storyworks Roundtable. We are happy to have Robert back with us after a long getaway to the UK, to England, and it's appropriate because tonight we are talking about travel, refueling, retreating, and otherwise resting your writer's brain so you can come back to your notebook or your keyboard refreshed and inspired. So welcome back, Robert. We're glad to have you at the round table again.
Yay!
Thank you very much. I did manage to spend a few days in the south of France as well, and then I was in Italy for approximately 12 minutes.
Wow, even better.
I'm jealous of your 12 minutes.
Yeah, by foot it was quite good actually.
Nice.
And then walking back into France again, the security guard said bonjour, and I thought, oh yeah, they're good, nice.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Let's start with experience. Are we travelers here at the round table?
I definitely am, yes.
Yeah.
I'm jealous of
Kathryn.
travelers.
Catheryn's jealous. We'll leave it at that.
I have done some traveling, but in the recent past, I have not been a very go get 'em traveler. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have done. My world traveling is in the past, hopefully in my near future as well. And in recent years, it's been more like camping trips. And I am actually heading to Colorado tomorrow. So I'm like, ooh, I haven't been in an airport in ages. It's all been road trips. So I did go to the Black Hills of South Dakota for a week in September. So that's my most recent significant road trip. So what can we take away from travel as writers? What are some of the great benefits that we get as writers?
I think you immediately experience change and stimulation because it's unavoidable, whether it's good or bad. Even as you say, even in an airport. I mean, you don't even have to travel to do that. You can go to an airport and just watch, and it's fascinating because there are stories unfolding in front of you, left, right, and centre. And I think that's one of the reasons why some writers even just go out to a cafe, because there's an energy of interaction or of engagement happening around you unconsciously or out of awareness for most people, but they might be in your awareness as a writer. And even if they're not, I think I used to go to a cafe, put headphones on, these ones I'm wearing now, which are noise cancelling ones, and write or plan, and just the sheer momentum of movement around you. And I think that's all amplified in the journeying process itself. And then there's the destination where you're suddenly exposed to new sights, new sounds, new smells, new cultural things. And you can't avoid all of that stimulating something. And then before I ramble too much more, one more point. I'm back. I was just finishing Ray Bradbury's Zen in the Art of Writing, which I don't know if you've read it, but it's wonderful. It's only a collection of essays, but it absolutely wonderful, and it's so pertinent to today's combination market, hybrid market, as well as self-published and traditionally published authors. And some of the things he talks about still happen today. And one of the things he said is, you kind of have to immerse yourself. But people always said to him, "Oh, you should go. You're writing about New York. You should go to New York and spend time there." And he said, "I would do that, but it didn't do anything for me at the time."
Right.
But then later on, these little landmines would crop up, and you go, "Oh yeah, I've been there. I've done that." And he would write very much from word associations as opposed to necessarily documented, or journaled experiences. So clearly, he felt it was worth getting out and about just for stimulation, if not necessarily something for immediate research.
Yeah, let's go back to what you were saying about so let's say you don't have a travel budget or nothing is planned for months, foreseeable months. You could just go somewhere like a cafe or an airport and be a witness and watch stories unfold around you. That could be kind of a mini retreat that you can do in a matter of hours instead of planning a trip. Do you guys have examples of how this has influenced your writing or ways that you've used it as a writer?
I think it helps your observation, even if you don't realize it. Being in a new place, even so, like, I agree, go somewhere like a cafe or an airport or something, but go somewhere new. Because if you're not familiar with it, then you're going to find yourself being aware of things that maybe you wouldn't be familiar or aware of in a familiar setting, because it's just part of the atmosphere of that place and you're used to it. Like, I even did a lake vacation with my relatives last year, and it's not far away, and it was just like a little cabin, but you notice things like, do the neighbors always get together at 9 p.m. to tootle their boats around the lake with the, with loud music? I mean, but you wouldn't notice that if that was somewhere where you went all the time, or, if you're part of that culture, even though it's like 4 hours down the road. Somewhere where you're going to observe things that aren't in your norm will help your brain start picking out details or things that are new.
Yeah, I love that you pointed that out, Kathryn, that it's important to go somewhere you don't normally go, to change the environment and mix it up. One of my great writer friends, Nico, calls it going to the other side. And so he makes a point of getting out. It was every Saturday. I don't know if it still is, but getting out and doing something completely different, whether that's going like to a party that he wouldn't normally go to, or going to a religious service, or, so it usually has some tie-in to a scene he wants to write, or just some experience that takes him out of his comfort zone, or going to see an exhibit at a museum and getting new food for thought from that, from what you take in, the visuals, and also noticing the other people at the exhibit, and are they my people? Are they a little bit different than... He and I went to see the Luther exhibit at the Minneapolis Institute of Art. So, Luther of the Lutheran Church, the reformer. And it was interesting. It was a little bit of both, seeing the exhibit and just taking in that stimulus, but also noticing the crowd and who they are and what they're like. And so we talked to one of the docents, and I guess Midwestern Lutheran churches were getting buses and bringing their congregations to the museum from all of our neighboring states. So it was a very different slice of life than what you would normally see going into this very urban gallery in Minneapolis, just on any random day for any, So it definitely kind of shook stuff up and gave us new fuel for things we might write later.
Right. And I like how you said that, like, he would do something every weekend that wasn't necessarily writing related, like going to a party he wouldn't have gone to, or, just because you're traveling doesn't mean you're doing it specifically for writing. And sometimes, and that's okay, resting your writing brain and letting it kind of chill, because it's there and you have all those skills and you have that happening in the background. And so you don't necessarily have to sit there and be like, I'm observing 20 things right now before I can enjoy myself. It's something that's going on in your brain that you don't necessarily have to focus on all the time. Now, if you do focus on it, you can get some good benefits out of it.
But or you don't
always
focus
travel
on
for
it
specific reasons
at all, but those impressions you take in are going to stay in your subconscious. They're going to be in your memory. The strongest impressions will last, and so those will be there for you when you next sit down to write.
Yeah, a bit like that, when you're in the shower or something, or taking a long bath, or, all of a sudden things come to you. And I think travel has a similar thing, because your attention is elsewhere. Whereas in our daily lives, our attention is quite directed, perhaps, and maybe routine as well. And so I think when you're out of the routine, sometimes that can allow other things to bubble up. I mean, sometimes it doesn't, as you say, but any change in routine stimulus, I think, it's generally a good thing for a writer.
Definitely.
Because if you think about it, one of the big pieces of advice we're all given is establish a writing routine, and any routine can become too automated, or what do they say? The only difference between a grave and a rut is that one has ends, and so
Nice.
if you could end up being in the rut, saying, okay, I've always got to come and have my budding chair by 8:30 in the morning, do this, and there's a lot of writers who do that, are very successful, and I'm sure the successful ones also combine that with some form of stimulation, and travel is it's a good justification, isn't it?
Right.
I must go to Italy because my writing brain needs it.
That's right.
It's very true. I think, the butt in the chair thing is great for productivity day in and day out, just like having a job that pays your bills is great. But you need that vacation to rest and refresh yourself from the job or from the creative projects, whatever it is that you're investing your energy in. And so when you take a break from the butt in the chair routine, you can come back to it with fresh energy and fresh ideas. Have you found, since you got back from your trip, Robert, that you feel eager to write and have new ideas?
Yeah, I actually wrote while I was away as well. I was typically over-optimistic, thinking, I'm going to be 25 hours playing. I'm going to get the laptop out and do 3,000 words. I did nothing. But it's kind of tiring, and then there's the attraction of all these movies. So it's a bit of a movie marathon, really. But when I got to, and I was going to do some in England, but I was there for my mum's 80th, and so it happened. But when I was in France, I had some spare time. And I had an apartment right on the Mediterranean, in just outside of Monaco, to the west of Monaco, sorry, to the east of Monaco, and within walking distance to Italy. And I had my dictaphone with me, so I went and sat on the rocks at the sea there. And remember, this is November, but it was really mild, and it was kind of t-shirt, long sleeves weather. It was lovely. So I just dictated, and then one day I walked into Italy and dictated on the way in walking. So that was really new. I'd never done anything like that before, so I thought I'll try that. So perhaps the change of location there was enough to stimulate, and that, I think, has knocked me back into there's something pulling me back to it now, which is good. So yeah, because I was definitely in a bit of a stale place before that. So yes, it has helped. Right. I wouldn't say I'm racing to sit behind my desk and do it, but I'm definitely feel much closer to. I like to outline. I like to plot, and that's I've been struggling with, a particular plot that I come and go with. I love and hate, and so I'm kind of keen to fix that, which is good, and then get back to dictating.
That is good. Yeah, I went. I think it's important to acknowledge that when we do travel, there are times when you take a writer's retreat, which I did a year ago, November, and did a Word Essential episode on that we can link to in the show notes. But then when you're just traveling for other reasons, don't put pressure on yourself to write. Let the traveling be the focus and what it's going to be. But then, we like to talk about journaling a lot, and having a journal with you when you travel is great, because you can just jot down a few words of an impression, of a great visual, of something you overheard, of a mood, the flavor of food, whatever. All of those things can then become food for your creativity later, without feeling like, oh, I have to sit down and do 3,000 words while I'm enjoying the view of the Mediterranean.
Well, and I think that's kind of like the problem that writers have, is that you can take your work with you, like anywhere you go.
Yes.
And I don't, this is the way my brain thinks too. Oh, I have a 4-day vacation in which I'm going to have nothing to do but relax. Therefore,
right.
I should write 1,000,000 words. And that's, like you said, it's not realistic, for one, and you're not resting at that point.
Right.
And then, and then you come back frustrated rather than where you should be, which is like, okay, I had a break.
Yes.
I feel ready to go, relaxed, refreshed. Maybe you had a great brainstorming session or something, because that's what your brain does when you leave it alone. But yeah, we have that tendency, don't we, to just say, oh, like Robert, I'm going to be on a plane for forever, therefore I should.
Yeah.
And we don't have to feel that.
No, and the reality is you're going to be cramped and it's going to be noisy, and the person next to you is going to have to climb over your lap 5 times, and like, just forget it. You'll be lucky if you can read 1 page of a book 10 times over or doze off. Yeah, when I was in the Black Hills, I wanted to journal all about the trip and write down everything I did on the trip, and I couldn't even get that done. There wasn't even time to journal. So then I came home, and I was trying to catch up on the journaling about the trip and do it all from memory and do it all sequentially and get all the details in there. So, I wasn't even ready to write till after I'd been home for a week, and I'm just on my trip journal. So
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I do really like Ray Bradbury's word association. He clearly sort of grew up on that idea that you every morning he would train himself to get up and he would just write a whole load of words down, just things that came out of his head, didn't know what they were going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe later he'd just pick one and force himself to, so it was a writing exercise, and force himself to write a story that connected some of these words.
Nice.
And I really like the idea that travel could be a way of stimulating things like that, because it's very easy to go traveling and then forget the immediacy of the experience. And I don't journal, so I don't have anything other than my photos to refer back to. But of course these days, we've all got our devices with us, and so I made sure that with my phone I was capturing things. I've got location services on, so you can see exactly where it was. You can't forget anything now. So it's a way that you could go back and say, well, I'm stuck for something. What about if I go back to a UK trip? Is there something I can associate out of that? But to be more deliberate, and I feel I've often been too organic, and just sort of allowed it. Oh, it was a trip. It will bring something.
Right.
It'll expand me. I'm a better person for it. But you could, as a writer, I think, if you wanted to, take a more deliberate focus and do like a Ray Bradbury thing, for example, and just say, okay, what are some words that come to mind because of the trip?
Right. And, we could all probably devote 15 minutes a day without putting pressure on ourselves. So maybe it's 15 minutes on the train or 15 minutes with your morning coffee where you do a little bit of free association of whatever kind works for you, whether it's plotting your next scene or doing the word association or journaling some impressions or whatever. And I think the phone thing is so interesting, such an interesting piece of our culture and our technology. Today, I find it's easy to rely on it. And then you kind of miss the moment because you're like, I'll realize I'm watching my screen instead of watching the event, and this isn't as fulfilling as what's in front of me. So I have to kind of go, okay, I took 3 pictures, put it away, and now have the experience of it. And when we're writing, we're trying to capture that experience, at least, for me, it's dangerous to have the phone there. I have to consciously okay, did that, put it away, go back to living the actual moment,
Yeah, I'm a quick capturer. I don't necessarily look for particular photo opportunities. I sort of go, okay, that's a beautiful street, boom, and then keep walking. It was quite hilarious, actually, flying into, I think it was probably when we flew into Nice. And so it was a beautiful day, and you fly along the Mediterranean coast, you actually fly past Nice, past Monaco, and then the plane does a massive U-turn and then comes in from the east. So you get this beautiful view. Both sides of the plane get the view. And most people had their phones out recording it through the window. It's hilarious as to how things have changed. It used to be that you just stared and marveled. And you wonder, okay, when are they going to watch that back? And for what reason?
Right. Well, that's the other thing too, is then you have all of this stuff, all of this data, and what are the odds you'll actually use it?
Most of the time it's not used again.
So have either of you done writers' retreats specifically to write and to go, have time away from life as an artist?
Only in a writers group. We've done that on a couple of occasions where we've just set aside half a day and all gone to somebody's house and done nothing other than write, but not as a holiday type of thing. No. You obviously have. What about you, Kathryn?
I have not. I've wanted to. It's on my list, my wish list, my dreams list, but I have not done that specific kind of trip yet.
Maybe we'll have to organize one, a roundtable writers retreat.
Oh yeah, that would.
There'd be at least 3 people.
That'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
There'd be 3 people there.
Yes, we'd have to be, pick a
Where's
good
the
location though for the airfare. Probably somewhere in Europe, right? We'd all have to cross an ocean to be fair.
Oh darn.
Yeah, it would be rough. Yes, yeah. Well, writers' retreats are, amazing. We suffer the same problems with the writers' retreat as we do with travel generally, in that you go thinking, I have all these days of doing nothing but writing, so I'm going to get 500 things done, and then you get 5 things done. But I think our creative minds need downtime too. And when we're so busy with our daily lives trying to fit our creativity in as part of everyday life, when you get that break from everyday life, everything kind of goes, whew, okay, time to deflate, time to rest. And it is important on retreats to do some of the nature stuff or the sightseeing stuff or whatever, so you get the stimulus and the change of scene and the new environment piece as well. But definitely recommended for the same reasons as travel.
Yeah, if you look up, I think it's Derek Murphy at Creative Indie. He's done a couple of castle retreats where he's actually done it and got other authors to come as well. I think it may have been Spain or France, the last one. And that always sounded super appealing to me because I love medieval things anyway. But the idea of going to a castle to do some writing, yes, that's a reason to go to Europe in and of itself.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have to hold our retreat at a castle.
In a purged village somewhere.
That's what the cool kids are doing. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and if it isn't in your budget, look at grants for artist residencies. Apply for residencies because there are those as well. And that the one I did was a month-long artist residency here in Minnesota at the Anderson Center, and dinner was cooked for us, and there were artists in different genres, different types of artists, not just writers, and different genres of writers as well. So in the evenings you'd have dinner together and have conversation and communing, but other than that your time was all completely wide open, so people went to their studios, and there was a sculptor and a painter and a whatever, and I think 3 writers, but you got the change of scene, you got the time to be creative, and you also had the stimulus of talking with other artists and communing with people who understand creative process, and you're all there for the same purpose, even if you're working in different mediums and such. So that that's another way you could maybe get a retreat to refuel, is just find like a meetup of artists or something and fuel your passion by having conversation with other creative people.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, but this podcast really is a method of travel for us, I guess. We're none of us in the same city, and so but our minds travel and we discuss the writing craft. I'll often take notes, and things will, I'm sure, seep through in how I'm approaching what I'm writing at the time. So there are many different ways to travel.
Definitely.
We haven't even touched on astral traveling yet. I'm surprised.
That's in our next episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, the out-of-body experiences are coming up next week. So, well, hopefully the roundtable is a means for our listeners to also commune with creative people, get new ideas, and feel charged up to go back to the writing desk. So let's wrap it up there. Do either of you have a final thought you want to toss out?
No, get out somewhere.
Get out, yes. Go out, travel, enjoy, refresh, renew, and join us next week at the Storyworks Roundtable. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening to the Storyworks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com.